Did you know that the price of houses in Canada has doubled in the last decade? And what's that got to do with public transportation? We'll answer those questions on today's episode of Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort, and Marco D'Angelo, the CEO of the Canadian Urban Transit Association, spoke with me about this housing study and the conference that we were at recently in Edmonton, the CUTA Fall Conference, in an in-person interview we conducted there. This, I think, you'll find fascinating to see the role of housing in public transportation and the interplay between them on this interview. I also had the opportunity to speak in person with Mike Bismeyer, who you may have heard many times on our podcast over the last couple years, talking about kindness and mentorship. He and I got to speak on that topic together at the CUTA conference in Edmonton, and he shares a few thoughts on the subject and kind of how he got started on this as a young person being bullied, at an interview I conducted with him on the trade show floor of the CUTA conference. This is the first of 3 episodes of Transit Unplugged, which were conducted at the CUTA conference. Next week, we'll have Eddie Robar, the Deputy City Manager of Edmonton, and Carrie Hotten MacDonald, the Manager of Edmonton Transit, talking about hydrogen power, their large battery electric bus garage there, and much more. And the following week, we interview Arthur Nicolette, CEO of Transdev Canada, one of the largest contractors there in the nation. Now, it's time for our interview with Marco D'Angelo, talking about the CUTA conference and housing. Great to be at the CUTA conference here in Edmonton, Canada, the Canadian Urban Transit Association, their big conference, and excited to have the CEO with me, my good friend Marco D'Angelo. Thanks for being back with us.
My pleasure, Paul. Nice to see you. Thanks for making the trip up here.
Yeah, awesome. I love Edmonton's a cool city, right? We've always heard about it. I've always heard about Edmonton Oilers and Wayne Gretzky. To get here, this is like they said, the most populous city, right? Above the highest, over 1 million people, latitude-wise.
Certainly in the northern hemisphere.
Northern hemisphere.
I mean, I'm trying to think of where Moscow is on.
Yeah. I think it's in the Western Hemisphere.
In the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah. So it's a big city.
Yes.
I didn't know what to expect when I got here, but great to be here. You've got a big audience here, nice crowd.
Yes.
Tell us about the conference here, the CUTA conference.
Well, it's our annual conference. We hold 2 per year, and this one is special because it also includes a large transit expo and trade show, and that'll be coming up tomorrow.
That's good. And you had a youth summit. Tell us about that. I got to speak at that the other day. It was fun.
Oh, that's great to hear. It was our 7th youth summit on sustainable urban transportation, and it was hosted at MacEwan University, just down the road from us here at the conference. Very happy to bring together 65 youth from across Canada, every region of the country, to learn about sustainability, urban planning, and meeting and networking with professionals and finding out about the careers of tomorrow. In fact, it's the 20th anniversary of the first Youth Summit way back in 2004. I was lucky enough to be helping to organize that. So 20 years later,
That's cool,
it's a really great thing to see a full generation of people that attended that Youth Summit. Our first vice chair at CUTA and the general manager of Halifax Transit, Dave Rigi, he also attended that first Youth Summit. So really, there's a lot of knowledge, and we've really benefited from engaging youth over the last 20 years.
That's great. And we need more young people getting into this industry, don't we?
We certainly do. Like every other industry, there's competing job market. We are looking to diversify and build the workforce that we have for public transit, and so having transit and the careers that support it be a choice for folks that are going through their education and offering mentorships and apprenticeships and bringing in engineers and training. These are many of the different ways in Canada that we are engaging with young people to invite them and choose transit as a career path for them.
Let's talk about CUTA a little bit more. So for those in America, people are familiar with APTA, and they may not be as familiar with CUTA, but you're very similar organizations, right? You just represent Canada.
Yes, very similar indeed. Representing manufacturers, local transit agencies, the businesses that support them, and governments and associations across the country that share similar values to us. So very much like the American Public Transit Association.
And what are you working on lately?
We've been working on a few things. We've been working on a new housing report that was released last month. And housing affordability is a little bit different than in the United States.
Okay.
Over the last decade, house prices have doubled in Canada. Doubled. And so it's a bit different than in the United States, where it has been increasing, but at a more gradual pace. And this has led to quite a bit of inflation in Canada. So as interest rates have been going up in Canada and the United States, It's risen actually more in Canada to try to cool down the economy and cap fast rising home prices. And that's making life less and less affordable for many Canadians. And this is why we think it's really the time to present transit as an answer to helping Canadian families coming out of the pandemic being able to afford the lifestyle that they need for themselves and their families.
Wow, that's awesome. So tell me about, you did the study, it came out. What were the findings?
Well, the findings were that we need to activate land. And so what that means is as capital projects are being built across the country, and we're very happy with the progress that we're making in building those, it's also very important that people who need to take transit and choose to take transit have affordable housing options that are near these great infrastructures that we're building.
Okay.
And so ensuring that there is affordability, ensuring that there's percentages of rental units that are being built, densifying around these transit hubs, around the hubs through transit-oriented development, even on top of transit stations. We see that in leading areas like in Vancouver, certainly has been doing that. Toronto
Kevin
is now
showed me
doing
one of those when I was there.
Okay.
Yeah,
where you'd have basically a transit station that goes down into a metro, and above it would be, an apartment tower or other retail infrastructure. And these are what the most dense cities around the world do, that have the highest modal shares for transit, thinking about places like Singapore, where college and university campuses are a station onto themselves.
Yes.
And it's really a way to move people around, to reduce congestion, to meet the greenhouse gas emissions target that Canada has, and also to provide equity for people that are on modest incomes to participate in their community fully.
Right. That makes sense. I thought it was interesting at the morning session this morning. Carrie, Hotten, MacDonald, the CEO of the local transit system in Edmonton, interviewed a couple of city council people. And one of the guys was talking about how that, our zoning rules and regulations really have a big determining factor on the affordability of housing. We've got to let people build smaller units. And so this is kind of what you're talking about, right? Changing policy.
It is. And it's been moving across the country. So even another city, the city of Ottawa, on a building lot, you can now build up to 4 units where that would typically have been a single family neighborhood.
Yes.
An example in the U.S., of course, is the state of California, where zoning has been open more broadly so that it's easier to build multi-residential units on a plot of land. Now, you think about Canada has a lot of land.
Yeah, you do.
We do. And we've got good infrastructure that connects it. But where the rubber hits the road is in providing an affordable lifestyle for Canadians. And that means using the land that we have in our urban communities more effectively, more efficiently. And that helps people to maybe have 1 car instead of 2 cars, or shortens commutes, more time with loved ones. And so these are the things that, as ridership has been returning, we're very happy that we're building these capital projects for tomorrow as well, because we have a country of about 40 million people, but we estimate our transit infrastructure is built for 25 million people.
Interesting. All right. What's number 2 on your list?
In terms of our housing report, part of it, we deal with streamlining the approval process. And so that means prioritizing transit-oriented development applications.
Oh, yeah.
The amount of time it takes to get simple things like a building permit, we've got to bring those times down. And that's something that's within a municipality's jurisdiction in Canada. And that is presenting the plan, having it reviewed, a notice period. Then there would be a variance type of meeting within the municipality where your neighbors would be able to comment. And so these processes, and then inspection after the fact, it really adds on quite a lot of time. So if you're building something as simple as an in-law suite, or building a small house on an existing property, the length of time that it takes for those small projects is very long. Now, scale that up to a large project, maybe a tower, replacing 4 single-family homes, and you're going to build a 30-unit rental housing project. And so that could take up to a year to get those permits. And so we want to streamline that.
Yeah.
And then also make sure that we've got the folks that do the actual construction. And so that gets back into the trades. And we heard today about that we have a shortage in our trades in Canada as well. So there's a number of things that are hindering us to finding a way to provide affordable housing to more Canadians.
That's awesome. Keep going. This is really interesting to me. But you don't think about this as the purview of transit agencies, but it really does impact our riders and what they do. So what's another recommendation from the study?
Yeah, I would say that it's evolving the mandate of transit authorities. And let me, an example that is in the report. Back in 2020, the city of Saskatoon created a target of 50% of new housing be infill development.
Okay.
And so what that means is building your neighborhood more densely. So in the city of Saskatoon, one of their major projects is to create a bus rapid transit system. And many cities across the prairies have been doing that. Cities that are from 300 to 600,000. I'm sure there's dozens of parallels in the United States that have brought in these bus rapid transit corridors. And evolving a transit agency's mandate from a Canadian perspective would be not just building the transit within a corridor, it would be evolving to manage that land so that housing can be built at the same time as transit. So that way, when a BRT or another capital project opens, right away you have ridership that's ready to use that service.
Oh, yeah.
So it helps to drive ridership, and it helps to also connect people with their communities more easily.
These are great housing recommendations coming from CUTA. Do you have one more you'd like to share?
Yeah, one more. It's a location efficient mortgage. And so what that means is typically when a prospective homebuyer goes to their bank to buy a house, the presumption is that homeowner also is buying a car or has a car, will buy a car.
Okay.
And so that occupies some amount of their credit. And a location-efficient mortgage, because it'll be within a transit-oriented community or development, it likely wouldn't have a parking spot. That way, your debt ratio would seem lower, and that would mean you'd be able to benefit perhaps from a slightly lower rate, or be able to manage a slightly more expensive home because you wouldn't have payments associated with a car and the things that come with a car. And so we think that's another way to help, especially first-time home buyers, enter the market.
What do you do with the study now? Are you going to take it to your legislature? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, certainly. It's one of the messages that we've brought to our federal government. In fact, it was launched in Ottawa on Parliament Hill, so right where the House of Commons meets. We were happy to be there.
You released this study there?
We released the study right in the House of Commons, actually.
That's great.
Yeah, it was. One funny thing was you booked the press conference room. And immediately before us was the federal minister of housing holding a press conference on the need to have more affordable housing. And so it was meant to be on some level.
You feel like you're making progress with it? Are they taking these recommendations and considering them?
We do. We believe so. We need to build about 3.5 million additional homes by the year 2030. And that's just to maintain affordability for Canadians, but also we're welcoming about 500,000 new people to our country every year. And so we need homes and jobs and opportunities. And so we're making headway on that front. By bringing and welcoming 500,000 new Canadians, traffic is also a problem. And so building these homes, we need to make sure that the neighborhoods where the homes are being built aren't designed for the single occupancy vehicle.
Okay.
That we have transit for them on day one. That also means returning to the question of operating dollars. And so Canadian transit systems, we're at capacity in many of our cities, especially in the suburbs around our largest cities like the Greater Toronto area, the Greater Montreal area. But the fare box revenue alone isn't able to keep up with the growing need for transit and the need for more transit and options around these big cities. And so federal government decision makers are listening. At the provincial level, they're listening too. And we work, of course, all the time with city councils across Canada that work really directly with transit authorities.
Wow. These are great recommendations, Marco. So where can somebody find it's online at your website? It
is. So it's online on the Canadian Urban Transit Association website, CUTA.actu.ca.
So last question then is, what's coming? What do you see coming over the horizon, for 2024 and beyond?
Well, 2024, we think will be an exciting year. Ridership has been returning across the country. We see a lot of new opportunities to engage with the public. We've opened a rail line around Montreal that it's owned by the public pension fund. called the REM. And so when it's complete, there will be about 50 stations creating a loop around the greater Montreal area. That's very exciting and is coming online. There's exciting projects in each region of the country. The move towards electrification, greening our fleets, and finding ways through housing and densification so that collectively these measures can help to tackle the 25% of greenhouse gas emissions, or GHGs, that Canada emits. And so that's 1/4. And if we can put a good dent into that, we'll be more on our way to meeting the climate targets that Canada has set.
Wow, that's great. Well, great talking to you today, Marco. Great conference. You've got wonderful transit in this country, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Thank you very much, Paul.
I'm with Mike Bismeyer. Mike, great to be with you here on the show floor of CUTA.
Well, thanks, Paul. It's great to have the Transit Unplugged team up here in Canada. We're super proud of our annual fall conference, and on behalf of CUTA and the business members, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to walk around all the booths and see all the new, exciting technology, and just to get to know our members here in Canada. I hope Edmonton's been treating you well.
It has been a lot. I think our listeners will recognize your voice from the times you talk about kindness and mentorship. You and I had the opportunity to do a big talk on the main stage on that this week.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. It's been an exciting show. I mean, obviously, I'm heavily involved with the Young Emerging Leaders, or Young Leaders Summit that we had ahead of CUTA. And it was great to have you invited in to speak to those leaders on Sunday. I had the opportunity to speak there as well. And then obviously rolling straight into our CUTA. It's been a busy time. And yeah, we did the opening session Monday morning, which was fantastic. A pleasure to be with you. But yeah, it's great to be in front of our peers here. It's exciting. And for those that don't know, this is only our second trade show in Canada since COVID and things got back together. So really good attendance. People are excited to be out and about and talking to their peers.
Mike, you are one of the foremost advocates for kindness in our industry, and it's great to have you on our show talking about that. But I'm always struck by the story that you told with me on stage the other day about what got you really understanding the importance of kindness, because you had a moment early in your life where someone was kind to you when you really needed it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and for those, I always advocate about kindness, and I am passionate about it. It's sort of a trait that runs in my family. I'm very fortunate. But yeah, I mean, and people have probably heard the story before, and please do reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about it. I keynote on it very often, but I was bullied. I had a year of school that was really not pleasant for me. And it was a random act of kindness that just changed my perspective on understanding that people were noticing things weren't right. And it happened on a school bus, which is maybe apropos. It was on a mode of transportation. Yeah. So, and someone stepped up. When I call as an upstander, they reached out.
Tell us that story a little bit.
Yeah, I was a young kid, and I was a little bit overweight, and my wonderful mom just kept saying, you hadn't hit your growing spurt. But what was happening to me is, I had a bus stop that was a few blocks from my house that I'd go to catch the bus. It was between grade 8 and 9 back in those days, junior high school. I just happened to have a person that, decided to make my life not pleasant. And, each day I'd show up at that bus stop and, he'd grab my lunch in front of others and tear it away from me, throw it in the garbage can, throw it on the floor.
And what would he say to you?
He'd make fun and say, you don't need a meal today. You're fat enough. Always. Yeah, it's terrible, right? And, we don't know.
For a young kid, man, that's going to affect you.
We don't know the impact words have on people. And, and I internalized it for quite a while. I didn't really tell my parents about it. And, but school was not pleasant. I went in at different exits at the school. I didn't want to. I did everything I could to not confront those guys, which then takes away from the education that you're there to learn about in your concentration. And I will say this, as much as I had a bad year, I can't imagine for kids nowadays. Like for me, the saving grace is when the bell went, it was over. There was no communication, no cell phones, and now the cyberbullying is nonstop. I can't imagine. Yeah. So
you got on the bus.
I got on the bus one day, and unbeknownst to me, this other young student said to me, "Hey, you can sit with me." And I didn't have a lot of trust of people at the time, not outside of my group of friends. But I sat down, and we pulled away from the bus stop, and he just leaned over and said, "I got your back." And I didn't know this student; it was someone I didn't know, but. I didn't know what he meant by that, but he reached into his knapsack and had brought an extra lunch. And, first of all, it was a massive random act of kindness, really for someone else that was at a young age, but they knew something wasn't right and I probably told their parents. And it did two things, right? It made me understand someone saw it. I finally had my little breakdown with my parents, told them what was going on. But, it just made me think of things different, right? And so actually, I came up with this idea. I started bringing my sandwich in my pencil box and hiding it, and I started to bring a dummy lunch. And the bully threw it away a few times, and I wasn't reacting as much.
Oh, you didn't give him the payback.
He eventually moved on, and unfortunately to someone else. But for me, and so,
But that put in your heart,
it did.
the importance of that,
Of
right?
stepping up for someone
Yes.
or pointing out the right thing, or also not being afraid to talk about it. And that's really, communication is the key to everything we do in life.
Yeah.
And then, I one of my early transit companies, I was fortunate to be on the original panel, people that originated the United to End Bullying Foundation. We were in a town where there was a horrible bullying incident where a young lady took her life, Amanda Todd. It's a story that's viral and people can look that up. But our office was located in that community and it had a big impact. We thought, what can we do to make a difference? And at that time, we were selling a product into the school bus world. And we started with a coloring contest and having an opportunity for kids to win money for a grant at their school to spread kindness. And it just grew and grew. And when I left that company, we were giving away $50,000 a year in grants,
Wow.
$1,000, $2,000 chunks. And I was so proud. I became the spokesperson. I'd go to the schools, give those out. But it's very empowering to have kids talk about it. And then I'd really like to thank Paul. I know we've had a great rapport and you've become a great mentor for me as well. But I do want to say it's great to finally get you on this side of the border. And, we don't want to let you go. We want to keep Canadianizing you. I know you got to go to a hockey game last night, which is really exciting.
And we brought him good luck, I think.
Brought him good luck,
Yeah.
And, we're looking forward to it. For those that don't know, we have 2 conferences here. The next one for us is the spring in Halifax. That's our, sort of our networking and session event, which is usually a fantastic Halifax, wonderful place. So on behalf of all the Canadians, thanks for coming here. And on behalf of CUTA and the business members.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi, this is Tris Hussey, editor of the Transit Unplugged podcast, and thank you for listening to this week's show. Special thanks to our guests, Marco D'Angelo, and our regular contributor, Mike Bismeyer. Now, coming up next week on the show, we're staying in Edmonton, where Paul is interviewing Eddie Robar, Deputy City Manager in Edmonton, and Carrie Hotten MacDonald, who now runs Edmonton Transit. They're going to be talking about hydrogen-powered buses. While you're listening to the show, if you could do us a favor and rate and review Transit Unplugged, wherever you listen to podcasts, we'd really appreciate it. Rating and reviewing the show helps other people become part of our transit enthusiast community. If you have a question, comment, or would even like to be on the show, you can email us anytime at info@transitunplugged.com. Transit Unplugged is brought to you by Modaxo. At Modaxo, we're passionate about moving the world's people. And at Transit Unplugged, we're passionate about telling those stories. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.